Gold for drones, silence in Istanbul, and NATO jitters in Washington. As Russia gets deadlier partners and Ukraine scales up its drone dominance, the diplomatic fog thickens. Meanwhile, Poland arms up, faith is crushed in occupied territories, and Kellogg keeps talking. We've got a lot to unpack, so stay with us. This is The Gaze. Don't forget to follow us on our website, YouTube, and socials for more sharp takes and frontline reporting. When money stinks, Russia pays in gold, literally. Iran doesn't want Putin's rubles, dollars, or euros in exchange for Shahed kamikaze drones. What Tehran does accept, though, is solid gold, and Moscow obliged. According to reports, Russia transferred gold bars worth around $104 million to settle part of the drone tip. Using gold helps them sidestep US sanctions. Of course, no SWIFT, no dollars, no visibility. But the deal goes beyond trade. It has built a dangerous bridge between Iran and Russia, enabling Moscow to localize production of Shahed drones inside the Alabuga Special Economic Zone in Tatarstan. The plan? Crank out 6,000 kamikaze drones by summer 2025, fueling their war machine in Ukraine. And here's where it gets darker. The Economist reports that Russia is recruiting young African women, even underage girls, to work in drone factories in Alabuga. And the goal? Assemble drones. The logic here? Easier to control. According to Alabuga's head, Timur Shagivliev, African men are too aggressive and dangerous, but young women are obedient. What's this if not modern-day exploitation dressed up in military-industrial needs? China has cut Mavic drones and parts exports to Ukraine and the West, while at the same time increasing drone shipments to Russia. That's according to Bloomberg, citing both official and anonymous sources. Even worse, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that China is now helping Russia build drones. Yes, inside Russia. And Ukraine has evidence that Chinese nationals are working in Russian drone production facilities.
The Mavic is a popular civilian quadcopter, normally used for aerial photography, which can be adapted to carry explosives. On the battlefield, Mavics can be used both for surveillance and to attack enemy targets. Drones have become central to the war in Ukraine, dramatically reshaping the tactics both sides employ on the front line because of their ability to limit offensive maneuvers. They've also been increasingly used for long-range strikes far behind the front lines. From the Bloomberg publication,
still, Ukraine isn't sitting back. They've developed their own alternative to Chinese Mavic called the Shmavic. Same idea, but with upgrades and irony. The Shmavic is a tactical-level recon drone with 15-kilometer range, up to 60 minutes of flight time, and jam-resistant secure comms. It's not built for Instagram reels, it's built for war. It features Ukrainian military software with target recognition, night vision, and common system integration. And it's working. According to Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky, just in May, Ukrainian forces used drones to destroy nearly 90,000 Russian targets. You heard that right, 90,000.
The systematic expansion of drone units is delivering real results. In May alone, over 89,000 enemy targets were hit and destroyed using various types of drones. The enemy is copying Ukraine's defense forces and actively expanding its own drone capabilities. That's why we must maintain our development pace and constantly build up our capacities to stay one step ahead. Alexander Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, in a Telegram post.
Well, here we go again. Russia's concerns have made a comeback. In an interview with ABC News, General Keith Kellogg, Special Envoy to Ukraine, said the US currently considers Russia's concerns about NATO eastward expansion legitimate, and that the process should be paused.
Moscow's fears over NATO enlargement are understandable. Joining NATO requires the agreement of all 32 member states. I could name at least 4 that are hesitant. Keith Kellogg, Trump's special envoy for Russia-Ukraine war, in a comment to ABC News.
Kellogg didn't just mean Ukraine. He also named Georgia and Moldova as countries Moscow sees as red flags. We're saying, okay, we can put a stop to NATO coming closer to your borders. That's their security issue, said Mr. Kellogg. Of course, he added, Trump will have the final word on that. But let's not forget, for Putin, halting NATO enlargement is not a suggestion. It's one of his core demands to stop the war against Ukraine, alongside, naturally, lifting some sanctions. We've heard this tune before. Back in 2008, the West blinked, NATO's accession for Ukraine and Georgia was shelved to avoid provoking Russia, and the result was the war in Georgia, and then the war in Ukraine. So, yes, General, when you walk on a Russian leash, it drags far. Kellogg calls it Russian concerns. We call it a proven recipe for bloodshed. History is clear. When NATO expansion halts, Russia invades. That's the real security issue. So what do actually NATO allies think of this pause? Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky had a crystal clear response, and trust us, it wasn't vague.
NATO enlargement is in Russia's security interests. Where Russia borders NATO countries, there is no war. In other regions, it is. Jan Lipavsky, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, on X social network.
But Keith Kellogg didn't stop there. In an interview with ABC News, he confirmed that representatives from the US, United Kingdom, France, and Germany will join the next round of Ukraine-Russia peace talks in Istanbul on the 2nd of June. According to Kellogg, national security advisors from all four Western powers are expected to participate. These same officials, he said, were involved in shaping Ukraine's 22-point ceasefire proposal during prior meetings in London and Paris. But there's a snag. Russia hasn't delivered its own version of the so-called memorandum.
And we've got that right now. The Ukrainians are willing to do a freeze in place, what I call a ceasefire in place. Mm-hmm. And then we'll, for a period of time, they're willing to set up a militarized zone. What they basically said is, we'll back up 15 kilometers, you back up 15 kilometers to the Russians. So, you know, that's this 30-kilometer, 18-mile zone that you can actually observe. And you can actually say, okay, are there any intrusions?
Neither Andriy Yermak, chief of the office of the President of Ukraine, nor Defense Minister Rustem Umerov, who will lead the Ukrainian delegation in Istanbul, have received any formal document from the Russian side. Kellogg emphasized, the top priority remains reaching a comprehensive ceasefire on land, in the air, at sea. We need to compare both sides' proposals and determine where we can negotiate and where there's no room for compromise. Sounds logical, but how do you compare both sides if only one side shows up with a proposal? For the record, Sergei Lavrov himself proposed the 2nd of June for the second round of talks. But surprise, no formal Russian proposal has surfaced. President Zelensky called the delay a mockery of international diplomacy. And while the US continues to play mediator, Russia stalls and strikes. Peace talks aren't the only thing Russia's trying to destroy, and as Washington tries to appease the monster keeps devouring. Dmytro Badiou, a US citizen and pastor of the World of Life Pentecostal Church in Russian-occupied Melitopol, was arrested by Russian forces in March of 2022. During his captivity, he was falsely accused of working for the CIA and received direct death threats from the Russian military. His life was spared only after a personal intervention by the US State Department.
The soldier said, "We know who you are, what you are. You're a CIA employee, a spy. You gave away our positions, our people died because of you. You led protests in the city, you're giving money to the armed forces of Ukraine, you lead the partisans here. We have orders to shoot you." Dmytro Badiou, a US citizen and the pastor in Russian-occupied Melitopol.
Now a movie made by someone our team knows gives you the key to that dark castle.
I've been a United States Marine, a police officer for 15 years, been a Special Forces Green Beret. I never met fear until I came to Ukraine.
Many evangelical churches absolutely destroyed.
The devil knew exactly how to attack.
Once I came to Ukraine and saw what's going on here, this is good versus evil.
Russian forces are closing churches and persecuting Christians.
All across Russian-occupied Ukraine, soldiers are shutting down places of worship.
Vladimir Putin not only wants to control Ukrainian territory, he also intends to silence the church and take away religious freedom.
The film, titled A Faith Under Siege, you can probably tell where it's going, was produced by Stephen Moore from the Ukraine Freedom Project. This is Stephen and his closest ally, Anna Shevtsova's common good deed for Ukraine, together with Karl Algren, volunteer chaplain with Ukraine Christian Rescue Service, and the film's associate producer. These people believe something very simple and very powerful. Freedom is a core human value. We suggest you take a moment to watch it and see for yourself what Russian terror really looks like when it targets believers in Ukraine, just because Russians can. How do you prepare for something when you don't know exactly when or how it might strike? There is only one answer. You stay ready, always. While others in Europe still flirt with appeasement or talk in circles about security guarantees, Poland is acting. With one of the highest military budgets on the continent, Warsaw is rapidly fortifying itself against future threats, especially from its ever-aggressive neighbor, Russia. So, while some are still debating red lines, Poland's already drawing them with tanks.
In 2025, Poland's military budget increased by 40% compared to the previous year. It now stands at nearly €48 billion, or 4.7% of the country's GDP, a record high among NATO member states. During a visit by Poland's Minister of Defense to the US, his American counterpart, Pete Hegseth, called Warsaw Washington's most reliable ally in Europe.
The relationship between the United States and Poland is rock solid. Both countries demonstrate peace through strength. President Trump also sends his regards and appreciation for all Polish leadership and the Polish people do. A model ally for the United States. They're on the eastern flank of NATO, and we're going to be encouraging 5%. We don't have to encourage Poland. You are almost there already, leading the way on investment in Europe's largest land army, modernizing that force, and the defense industrial base, which is critically important, not just obviously here in the United States, but in Europe as well.
According to Poland's defense minister, a new level of cooperation could be the establishment of Polish-American defense companies, primarily aimed at large-scale investment in Poland's defense industry.
In today's rapidly changing world, security challenges have become more serious, complex, and interconnected than ever before. That's why we fully support President Donald Trump's administration's efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. We are sure, and our broad defense cooperation is the best proof that the United States of America remains the guarantor of global stability and development.
Lithuania has also announced plans to raise its defence spending to 5% of GDP. Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys believes the country could reach that target as soon as next year. His Estonian counterpart, Kristen Michal, confirmed that Tallinn is also working toward increasing defence spending to 5% of GDP. After lifting its debt brake on defence spending, Germany is also moving forward. Deputy Defence Minister Carsten Breuer has already signed a document outlining plans for a large-scale military upgrade by 2029, according to Reuters.
And we are following him on this, and we see this as a clear commitment by the United States of America to Article 5. NATO stands closely together, and everyone must know that this defense alliance has become stronger as a result of this deplorable war and is closer together than ever before.
The commitment by NATO member states to spend 5% of GDP on defence will be the central topic at the upcoming NATO summit. According to NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte, the previous 2% target no longer meets today's security challenges.
Russia's brutal war against Ukraine, the threat of terrorism, intense global competition, and flashpoints around the world, from the Middle East to Asia. Russia has teamed up with China, North Korea and Iran. They are expanding the militaries and the capabilities. They are preparing for long-term confrontation.
Rutte also noted that, at the June summit, NATO countries will need to define priorities for military support to Ukraine. He emphasised that higher defence spending will allow NATO states to send more weapons to Kiev. Reported by Andriy Dmitrenko, UATV News.
While Russia plays the long game with gold, drones and terror, Ukraine keeps innovating and fighting back with tech, resilience and truth. Whether on the battlefield or the negotiating table, the stakes couldn't be higher right now. What do you think will happen next? Drop your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for more with The Gaze.